All right, we're gonna let the saga continue because it's not gonna stop or anything. It's not gonna stop or anything. Starting on page 16. Recently, as I came across in my reading, researchers have found promising indicators of memory in plants. Others found that a wide variety of plants are able to distinguish themselves from others and can tell whether or not those are genetic kin. When such plants find themselves beside their siblings, they rearrange their leaves within 2 days to avoid shading them. Pea shoots, roots, appeared to be able to hear water flowing through sealed pipes. Sealed pipes. And grow toward them. And several plants, including lima beans and tobacco, can react to an attack of munching insects. Munching, like I'm not gonna say Munchausen, but munching insects. By summoning those insects' specific predators to come pick them off. Other plants, including a particular tomato, secrete a chemical that causes hungry caterpillars to turn away from devouring their leaves to eat each other instead. So that's like the hungry, hungry caterpillar. I don't know if you've seen that child's book, but it's about a very hungry caterpillar. Go read it. Papers probing other remarkable behaviors were growing from a trickle to a fairly robust stream. It seemed like botany was on the verge of something new. I wanted to stick around and watch. Back at my desk, in the air-conditioned newsroom, I savored these small tears in the fabric of my day. Something about it's spelled the same way. I'm sorry. I'm kind of, I guess I must be stuttering. Sorry. Something about this renaissance in the study of plant behavior spoke to an earlier me. I was an only child for the first 9 years of my life until my brother was born. Even then, a newborn wasn't much use to a 9-year-old girl, especially not one who truly believed she was an adult trapped in a child's body, which is to say I was alone and predisposed to fantasy. Girls of that nature tend to build complex internal worlds that they proceed to drape like a blanket over the world around them. Adults who don't understand this disposition tend to call it melodramatic. But I resented the word, which implied that my version of reality couldn't be trusted. I was sure I was simply seeing things around me for what they actually were. In most cases, those things were trees and squirrels and sometimes rocks, and they were very much alive, alert to the world. Children are known to be inborn animists, noticing things that other people, namely adults, seemed not to only deepen my sense of separateness. In spring, I watched the hard beaks of purple crocuses crack the cold earth like hatched chicks. A red-bellied woodpecker drilled the enormous white oak outside my bedroom window. Each time I caught a creature in the act of unrestrained creatureliness. There's a song that you should go listen to. I'm going to channel while I'm doing this because I don't want to lose the idea. It's by Stacey Barth. Yeah, by Stacey Barth, and it's called Flawed Beautiful Creatures. Each time I caught a creature in the act of unrestrained creatureliness, I felt I'd stolen a glimpse behind the curtain into their world, the real world. The best part of my childhood came home. The best part of my childhood home was a mid-sized depression in the land some 100 yards into the woods behind our house. Each spring, some 2 or 3 feet of rainwater swelled there and stayed nearly all year, icing over in December. In summer, I would check my rubber boots for spiders and then amble out ankle deep, petting the spongy mosses that clung to the tops of the half-submerged rocks and getting the skunk cabbages as if they were my friends. And they were, in a way. A mated pair of mallard ducks also lived in the swamp, but I didn't talk to them. Yeah, a mated pair of mallard ducks also lived in the swamp, but I didn't talk to them. They seemed to be socially occupied already. They had each other. The plants, on the other hand, seemed to have nothing else to do. It wasn't so much that I imagined these plants to be little humans in another form. I don't remember even thinking they talked back to me, but I also felt that they weren't exactly mute either. They had their own thing going on, like me. They were like children, underestimated. In The Ecology of Imagination in Childhood, the writer and researcher Edith Cobb spends spends 2 decades investigating the role of nature in the early thinking of children. She finds that children have an open system attitude. This is in bold quotes. That allows them a certain emotional proximity to the natural world. For the young children, the eternal questions of nature, of the real, is largely a wordless dialect between self and the world, she writes. She references many artists and thinkers who describe their creative methodology to be essentially a channeling of the perspective that they had as children. Bernard Bernstein, a 20th century giant of art criticism, writes in his autobiography that this happiest moment, perhaps, was a young boy standing on a tree stump. Yeah, he wrote in his autobiography that this was the happiest moment that he experienced for himself. It was a morning in early summer. A silver haze shimmered and trembled over the lime trees. The air was laden with the fragrance. The temperature was like a caress. I need not recall, that I climbed up a tree stump and felt suddenly immersed in its itness. I did not call it by that name. I had no need for words. It and I were one. Who doesn't have a memory like this? The itness here bears so much resemblance to the sense of the real, echoed by Sachs and Dillard and von Humboldt, and to what I felt as a child crouched and watching the crocuses. I wondered what moments like this are and what they can do, what space they open up for thought. Just food for thought, I guess. Just food for thought. Decades after leaving that house in the woods, I was a city dweller hermetically sealed into an office building. My 9-year-old sense of knowingness of a world beyond and the people theater was dulled to a slick nub. But then the fern obsession came over me, and then the plant intelligence debate. Something familiar began to tick quietly inside me again. Lunchtime botany reading became my reason for the day. What I found in the scientific journals, was some of the most acerbic controversy I'd ever come across in my years as a reporter. Just as common as the papers exploring plant intelligence were the responses denouncing the burgeoning field, but most often for word choice. Intelligence applied to plants, but did not sit well with the plenty of plant scientists. Consciousness, a yet bolder conjecture. Consciousness, a yet bolder conjecture, even less so. They made good points. Plants don't have brains, much less neurons, and plants evolved to meet challenges so different from our own. What need would they have for either of those things? A paper in Trends in Plant Science titled Plants Neither Possess Nor Require Consciousness, co-authored by 8 highly credentialed plant scientists, appeared to tip off a series of heated back and forths. The authors wrote that it was extremely unlikely, this is in quotes, extremely unlikely that plants lacking any anatomical structures remotely comparable to the complexity of the threshold brain possess consciousness. Rather, they said anything a plant did could be chalked up to innate programming via genetic information that has been acquired through natural selection and which is fundamentally different from cognition or knowing, at least as these terms are widely understood. The authors that conceded that excellent papers have been published by plant scientist proponents make no contentious claims, even the ones about the role of electrical signaling in plant bodies, which they concede can be analogous, like an analog clock, like an analog reading of a clock versus digital or military. But they are careful to say not homologous to animal nervous systems. Anyway, the controversy, they wrote, stemmed from researchers who took their conclusions too far, who visibly overamplified the meaning of terms like learning or feeling in service of the plausibility of their claims. Why is anthropomorphism resurgent in biology today, they lamented. Science is a conservative institution for a reason. Conservatism is a crucial backstop against false knowledge. But something in this paper felt self-defeating. Science indeed has no agreed upon definition for life, death, intelligence, nor consciousness. Words certainly matter, but the definitions of these words are not settled and therefore expansive. Could plants not hold intelligence that look quite different from our own? And the truth was, whatever electrical signaling pseudo-nervous system they are talking about sounded extremely compelling. Science, for all its strengths, is constrained to the sort of questions that can be answered using the scientific method. The meaning or definition of life is arguably not one of them. Left to the sciences, which were never built to take up ethical questions of being and non-being, plants remain conceptually locked out in the inanimate cold. It's like seeing something as like a chattel rather than as an actual being. Yet here, where all the scientists valiantly tried to engage with the hardest questions of all, the very nature of being alert to the world, the hard problems of consciousness, and they were, after all, the stewards of the scientific information that might be used to come up with any ethical conclusion about where plants fit and how we might relate to them. Permitting or not permitting certain experiments to proceed and be published was entirely in their hands. I wanted to listen closer. Right, so who decides facts? Who decides fiction? Typically, the victors are the ones that create books or write down history in their favor. It doesn't mean that that's factually correct. I think that's basically what they're trying to say. Permitting or not permitting certain experiments to proceed and be published was entirely in their hands. I wanted to listen closer. It was clear that the anti-plant intelligence camp wished to be explicit that plants are not like animals, but they were using a human-centric definition of intelligence and consciousness to claim that plants couldn't possibly possess either thing. That argument seemed to me like it was marred by the internal contradiction. It doubled back on itself. Paco Calvo, a philosopher of cognitive science at the University of Murcia, and Anthony Trewavas. Sorry if I just butchered your name. I'm sorry if I just completely slaughtered that. A well-known veteran of plant physiology at the University of Edinburgh agreed, this is surely circular reasoning. Beyond that, I wondered if it was fear. I could see why those arguing against the idea of plant intelligence wouldn't want the narrative to slip away from them and enter mainstream culture prematurely, where it might be washed of complexity and absorbed into some diluted, fanciful form. Perhaps it would be used to support the same New Age notions that got them into such trouble last time with the secret life of plants. This I understood up to a point. There has always been an extreme tendency in popular culture to layer simple human narratives on other species, as seen in virtually every fairy tale or animated film. Still, it felt like a clear underestimation of that same capacity. The public's imagination was expansive, I thought. It could very well expand to include non-human types of intelligence if given the chance. If given the chance. Yes, it was a tall order. Making the mental space to imagine truly different intelligences without jumping to easy human conclusions is a difficult task. Most of us haven't been asked to do that before. But grappling with complexity is a mind-expanding exercise. To hold back the larger scientific inquiry based on a fear about how it would be received seemed unfair to the rest of us. The world we could have if complexity was not backgrounded was the world I wanted to live in. It seemed I had come to the plant intelligence debate early in its formation, but at just the right time. There were so many threads still to be picked up, yet there was real science behind it, and the results coming in were too alluring to leave aside. What was at stake? Over and over, I saw the debate framed in a dispute over syntax. It looked to me more of a dispute over worldview. So what was at stake? Basically, the definitions, the meanings, the words, the iambic pentameter, the syllables express its language. We don't have the language of plants. So expanding our mind towards understanding that is not something that naturally comes to people. What was at stake? Over and over, I saw the debate framed as a dispute over syntax, but it looked to me more of a dispute over worldview, over the nature of reality, over what plants were, particularly in contrast to ourselves. This has a natural pause. I'm just going to stop there because that's a lot to digest. All right, I'm going to use the tarot deck that I created for myself. Yeah, I created this, so just go with it, I suppose. I get 4 cards. I'll choose one at the very end to be the bottom of the deck. Okay, so this is the Temperance card, and it says, discipline, a bold legacy gift. That's first and foremost. Okay, then I've got the 7 of Cups. This did come out in reverse, but in this specific card, it doesn't really matter which way it comes out. This is prepare to smile. So that's kind of what it was trying to say about language being rather limiting and trying to express the mental thought process of a species that we're not even respecting, really. I mean, we've got to eat plants and animals. We don't have to, but we do. We wouldn't have much else to consume since we can't digest plastic. And when you think about neuroplasticity, that part of our development as a species has not evolved to a non-verbal kind of communication style. This is the ugly truth. This is the 4 of Pence. So that's what I'm saying, is that when you're gonna take a run, your body knows how to create and build muscle using all types of digestive means, all types of understanding that's already encoded within your DNA. If you're going to prepare to, it says smile, but let's just pretend that the S isn't there. It would mean that all of us are these orangey creatures that don't know how to evolve color, that we don't know how to expand or crossbreed or evolve in any way, shape, or form. The smile that we've got, the physique, the presentation of self wouldn't mean much to a fish. Perhaps if it's part of its, protection mechanisms, or if it's part of its bodily well-being and health and happiness, like if there's oil spilled into the water, it affects all the fish, and they've either got to evolve, move, or die. That's the ugly truth that goes along with preparing to smile. If we're not going to go that extra mile, we're really never going to experience this kind of experiential development. And although experiential development can be a really great thing, a really positive thing, a very good, uplifting, healthy, stamina-filled experience, when you're not able to have the mental flexibility, acuity, or open-mindedness, as they were talking about, to understand that even plants will either yield to their own genetic person, or the danger of dying becomes very real. That's the same thing that goes on. You could map the bottom of the ocean. You can map your brain. You give people pills if you're a nurse using QMAP skills. So you need to know how to map out the charts that are in front of you and say, this is the time frame. Doesn't matter if it's military, analog, digital. That's the time frame that the person's supposed to take their medications, right? It does matter in terms of the behavior of that person. It does affect their mentality, possibly their understanding of reality versus this more childlike, innocent exploration. If you've ever seen Finding Nemo, this would be the drop off where the barracuda could come straight up and take your children or kill your children. So, to a specific degree, yeah, they swim in schools of fish, but at the same time, the ugly truth is that doesn't necessarily deter predators. It doesn't ensure that they're going to be thriving, safe, healthy, happy, or any of those things. Not necessarily. And it doesn't mean that it's not the case. It just means um, there's two parts to this. You can prepare to smile, but you also need to be prepared for the ugly truth to rear its head at any given point. It's a same thing on the Serengeti, same thing in the jungle. So we were talking about Fern Gully a while ago. That's a bold legacy, but not when it's burnt to the ground, not when it's um, polluted, when the atmosphere becomes artificially altered in a way that damages, literally damages every species, not only the fish, but also the coastline of the beach or the peninsulas that these fish are swimming in, or the riverbeds. Any of those things, they can be detrimentally altered. Detrimentally, if you've never seen Altered Carbon, it's about human experimentation, and they were talking about um, experiments that are allowed and ones that are not allowed. Humans feel like it's perfectly fine to experiment on each other. We do animal testing using, I don't know if you could see this, but it's the background of that is makeup. Some people will experiment on animals, some people don't. Some people gob makeup on to the point where you could wipe away their entire face with a Kleenex. Or some people don't wear any makeup at all. It's a preference. It's an environmental understanding of wanting to be ugly versus smiling. It's wanting to be happy versus survive. There's a difference in the two. You can survive and be relatively unhappy. If you want genuine um, joy, bliss, euphoria, those are words that you have to take into a bold account. Yeah, I think I couldn't have pulled a better card. This is the Knight of Wands. I am what I make up. And it says a fine line because it's the city map. This is maybe the part of the city that's dubbed to be too this or too that, too gentrified, too ghetto, too uppity. I don't know how you would define these two because it's all something that we make it up as we're going along. You either choose to live here or there. That's what's going to define the lines. It's the both sides of the track, the train track. It's a steel road that's been built through the middle of the country. It's who is John Galt? John Galt is who you make him to be. If you've not read that book, then I think it's Aaron Rind. That's the ugly truth. I'll leave that for other people to explore because I've read those books before. They've made them into movies at this point, and it's super interesting to watch the necessity of society for itself to thrive. And that is literally what that the Society of Plants has a necessity to either set themselves up to consume light and perform photosynthesis, or to realize that the kind of genesis, synthesis, and then regenesis of life is going to have to be moved all on its own, all by itself, all on its own. The plant, it does say this, plants are rooted in one spot and they can, like an ivy, grow up a wall, or like bacteria or mold or any kind of, smaller fauna and flora. There's a red bloom that happens in Alaska, and the whales come and eat it. It's a whale watching expedition. Usually happens near the red bloom because that's when they come to eat. That's when the algae reproduces fast enough that it creates an entire meal. Even though algae is minuscule, that much algae and concentration is kind of like pouring oil into the ocean. Just a different life form that's being tapped into. It's an aquifer. It's some source of energy that can be consumed. And like I said, there is a time frame for these things. There's limits to what we are able to make up, but there's also no limit in the understanding of nature. It's already understood itself. That's why we've come this far. We spring from nature. It's a natural, bold legacy that everybody has. Not to say that, my genetic bloodline is the same as your genetic bloodline. Just saying that they've got different needs, different complexities, and natural attributes that will either attract or repel. It's just the way it is. I said I was only going to do 4, but I'm actually going to draw probably, yeah. So this is Keep Playing Strong, Glow Boost. This is Strength. In the traditional tarot, this is a Leo card. Like I was saying about survival on the Serengeti, a mother lion has to know how to hunt in specific for the nutrients for herself so that she can breastfeed. And then also, once her babies or cubs have matured, for them to have something for the pride as well, something for the pride to munch on also. So that's it for today.